I began to think that the university had been lucky to have me, not the other way round, and that depriving me of my scholarship was rank ingratitude on the dean's part, not to mention ignorance. In later years, Miskatonic would have been proud to have been associated with me and honored to call me an alumnus. Well, it had blown that chance. Zachariah Conroy would go on to become one of the greats of science, another Newton, another Darwin, and Miskatonic University would be nothing but a footnote in his life history, and an insignificant one at that. It would be forever known as the school that failed to nurture the brightest talent ever to have crossed its threshold. But would this expedition really be the sensible next step for me? I bombarded Nate with further questions. How long did he anticipate the voyage would last? Was it likely to be dangerous? And why had he neglected to mention anything about it before now? Nate had his answers ready. He estimated we would be away for 2 months, 3 at the most. He could not guarantee that there would be no risk, but we would be well armed, and he would never knowingly put me in harm's way. As for not mentioning it before, he had merely been waiting for the right moment. Already much of the groundwork for the expedition had been laid, but he had been intending to broach the subject with me only when a departure date had been fixed and his plans were further developed. He could not have foreseen that I would run into difficulties at Miskatonic, and it was a tragedy for sure, but from his point of view it was also propitious. He could not think of anyone he would rather have making discoveries with him than his best friend, who was also one of the finest biologists to walk the earth. I heard the words best friend and knew I was hooked. Nate and I shook hands and polished off the rest of the bottle of wine, then another. That night I slept in my dorm room for the very last time. The next morning I packed up my belongings and bade goodbye to Lake, who said he was sorry to see me go, but seemed, to judge by the curtness of his farewell, far from heartbroken. I moved into a vacant room at Nate's boarding house, the rent for which he paid on my behalf, and together we set about preparing for the trip in earnest. The ensuing few weeks flew by in a whirl of activity. There was much to be organized, and I took the onus of it upon myself. I wanted to prove to Nate that I was committed, and that I was grateful to have been invited along. Without this opportunity, I didn't know what I would have done with myself. Going home to Boston with my tail between my legs was never an option. I felt that I was better off considering myself an orphan from now on, my parents effectively dead to me. This caused me some regret, but at the same time invigorated me, instilling in me a resolve to stand on my own 2 feet. There were provisions to be bought, including dry goods, laboratory materials, weapons and ammunition, and clothing appropriate to the climate and terrain we would be encountering, along with a few trinkets such as paste jewelry and colored crayons, for it was conceivable that we might run into Indians en route and would need something to barter with in exchange for supplies such as fresh meat, or else offer us bribes in order to secure safe passage through hostile territory. The prospect of meeting wild Indians unnerved me. I was aware that some of the regional tribes had a fierce reputation and did not take kindly to pale-face interlopers. Yet I was also excited. I was soon to be going on an adventure, something that so far had been in short supply during my life. I reckoned I would come back from the Miskatonic expedition older, wiser, and with a fund of entrancing stories to tell. It would be, all said and done, an experience. The paddle steamer Nate had hired when I first clapped eyes on her at Arkham's docks did somewhat dampen my enthusiasm. She had seen much better days, indeed, better decades. Her hull was in need of a good scraping and repainting, and the seams between her timbers could have done with fresh caulk. Her gunwales were bumped and scuffed from countless minor collisions. Her superstructure, 2 stories of deck amidships, had a worrying list to it, as though at any moment it might sheer diagonally and collapse. Her paddle wheel, meanwhile, consisted of planks that looked half-rotten, set within an iron framework that was mostly rust. She was a respectable size, measuring some 60 feet from bow.